One of the questions I often get asked is when small water utilities are transitioning to a data driven organization, from a lot of them have always been paper, and they're looking at that transitioning to a data driven organization is where do you start? It can all seem very overwhelming. And the one thing you don't want to do is try to do everything at once. You got to pick some areas and start some pilot projects and do things slowly and then build up some momentum, get some quick wins, some successes, and then move on to uh, to getting other parts of that component together to become a truly data driven organization. But that's going to take a little bit of time, and you don't want to try to do everything right away. So one of the places you can really start that solves a couple problems is with standard operating procedures. A lot of small water utilities, there's some institutional knowledge that's in the heads of senior operators and the managers. It's not down on paper or recorded anywhere. And as these people age out, we have the silver tsunami that's going on in the water industry. And as people age out, there's a real danger that they take that institutional knowledge with them. So, in our transition to digital, uh, a data-driven organization and that digital technology, then standard operating procedures are one place you can start to really capture that knowledge and transform it into a digital format that's accessible to everybody. And that solves the problem of starting that transition to a data-driven organization, but also capturing that institutional knowledge that you really need to capture. And then you got new people coming on, and maybe you got some interns coming in or some new operators coming in, young operators. They're all going to be operating from the same knowledge base and have some standard procedures they can do. You're going to want to start small, and we're going to look at that in the video here. Um, and hey, everybody, I'm Tom Ballard, the groundwater guy, by way of introduction. And we're going to look at today is building a digital SOP library and how that's done, what it consists of, how it's done, and give you kind of a step-by-step process on how it's done. So let me dive in a little bit here and bring our slides up here. All right. There we go. So we are creating and maintaining a digital SOP libraries for small water systems. And this is going to kind of be a complete how-to on this. So the real challenge is the silver tsunami and the knowledge loss. And so that's a big part of what we're doing here with the SOPs, but it also starts our digital transformation too. So you're really covering a couple different areas here. So, but let's talk about the knowledge loss that's potentially going to happen as people age out and they take that institutional knowledge with them. So, really, we're looking at 60% of water utilities employees are expected to retire in the next decade, and some of that's sooner than that. I go to some of these water conferences, and you see the operators and stuff, and they're looking about as old as I am, and probably getting close to retiring or beyond retiring. And so, there's going to be some possibility for institutional knowledge loss, and that's what we want to solve with our digital SOP library here. So we got decades of hard-earned know-how at risk of being lost when it's all kept in somebody's head or maybe on some paper that's stuffed in a filing cabinet somewhere where everybody may not know where it's at and it's hard to get to. We want to make that accessible to everybody, and this digital SOPs really solve that problem. So small systems are the most vulnerable because usually that institutional knowledge resides in the heads of just a person or two, and you really want to get that down and get that recorded. So we're going to talk to you about how we're going to do that here. And so let's look at what SOPs and why they matter. So SOP, for people that don't know, stands for Standard Operating Procedure. This is going to be step-by-step instructions that document how to perform routine operations or respond to specific scenarios. And we'll dive into great detail here on how it's put together and what a template really looks like. But basically, we're basically creating these standardized procedures, getting them down so they're accessible to everybody. And in a digital SOP, those are going to be available in the cloud so everybody can call it up on their cell phone, for instance, when they're out in the field and have that knowledge instantly accessible and know how to do maintenance on this particular valve or solve this particular emergency situation. There should be an SOP for that and critical processes, and you can call that up, and you have then, in essence, transferred that critical knowledge to anybody that's on your staff. So it provides powerful training and reference tools because everything is documented. The step-by-step process is documented. We're even going to take our O&M manuals and digitize those, the OEM manuals for the equipment manuals. We're going to digitize those. Those should all be accessible. So you want to develop SOPs for every critical activity. When considering which tasks need SOPs, you want to focus on activities with significant consequences for compliance, safety, service outages, or cost impacts. So that's where you're going to want to start with SOPs because you want to standardize those procedures for those mission critical operations in your organization. All right. Going digital versus paper. Here's some comparison here. Your paper-based SOPs that everybody's operated on for years versus digital SOPs. So we have accessibility. With paper-based SOPs, you're limited to the physical location. Somebody may make a copy, take it out in the field with them. It's in a binder, but somebody may have left it in their truck at home or wherever. With a digital SOP, that should be available in the cloud, and it's available anywhere, anytime access, as long as you got an internet connection. And one of the things we're going to do when we start looking at going digital is making sure we do have internet connections or access to the internet so we can update these things or access these things, and also other critical information that we talk about as part of the whole digital transformation process. The update speed with a paper-based SP, it's gonna be slow. Um, Everybody's people may be on different versions and stuff, so you end up with kind of a mess. With digital SOPs, there's instant updates for all users. The error risk, lower risk with version control on a digital SOP. There's a high risk of outdated versions on paper. Searching capability, uh, very challenging with paper-based SOPs. You're looking through binders and with digital SOPs, you're going to set these up with keywords and metadata so they can be instantly searchable. So collaboration, um, paper-based SOPs, you're going to have to have meetings, it's time consuming. You can do simultaneous real-time collaboration on updating digital SOPs. And backup and security, paper-based SOPs, very vulnerable to damage and loss. And with digital SOPs, as long as you got good backup, you should have automatic backup and protection when you're in the cloud. So basically, paper over time, we're seeing increasing costs. Digital over time, you're going to see decreased costs over time. So this is good. So digital SOP libraries provide superior accessibility, efficiency, reliability compared to paper-based systems with lower long-term costs and better support during emergencies and staff transitions because this mission critical information is going to be instantly available through a cloud-based system. So, what is a digital SOP library? So, a digital SOP library is a centralized, cloud accessible repository of standardized procedures, documentation, visual aids, and operational data that captures institutional knowledge and enables consistent operations across a water utility. So, a lot of information there, but you can see this packs a lot of information into the definition of a digital SOP library. So let's look at the digital SOP ecosystem here. You're going to have your inputs. So you're going to have your staff knowledge. So you're capturing your veteran operators expertise. That's going to go into these digital SOPs. You're going to take your equipment manuals, the OEM manuals. Those are going to be digitized. Those are going to be in there and instantly accessible Regulatory requirements, you're going to know what the current regulatory requirements are, what your sampling procedures are, and what your specific monitoring plan is for your organization, and best practices. What are the industry standards? That's going to go into a cloud-based library. So there's going to be the written SOPs in standardized format. Those are going to be digital. You're going to have videos and photos. So you're going to have some visual documentation as well, checklists and forms. Those are going to be your work instructions, operating data, your records, and your analytics is all going to be in that cloud-based library. And then the users are going to be the operators. You're going to get some daily guidance and able to call these things up when you're doing your day-to-day job. Uh, Managers can call these things up for oversight and planning purposes. New hires, this is really going to shorten up your training and onboarding for new hires. Having these consistent SOPs is really going to shorten your training time and get people up and running a lot more quickly. And inspectors compliance verification. So key features, standardized templates. We want to have a standardized SOP template that we use so we're consistent. You're going to want to have version control so everybody's on the same version. You always know what version you're on because as you update things, new equipment gets put into the system. You're going to update things, so you're going to change the version to reflect that new equipment, a new version of software. Any of those things, that version control is going to allow you to know you have the most recent SOP. Searchable content, the metadata is going to allow you to find it by keyword. So you're going to be able to just log on and you don't need to know the specific name of the SOP. You can just look by keyword and search it. And system integration, you're going to link with your SCADA system, your GIS, and your enterprise asset management system if you have that. And when we talk about EAMs, that can be complicated, sophisticated software you might have invested in, but it can be something as simple as Google Sheets in a Google Workspace and dashboards there. So that may be your EAM, and which, quite frankly, suffices for a lot of small water districts. You don't need to go to the really expensive, complicated software. So the cloud tech benefits and options. So the benefits are really remote access. You can access the SOPs from anywhere, backup and security. So automatic data backup. So you're backing up everything, you're not losing it. Scalability, you can start small and grow without large upfront costs and infrastructure. And I would certainly recommend that. And I'm going to kind of keep pounding that in is you want to start small and do some pilot programs, make sure it works for you, and then start to scale up from there. Lower IT burden, reduced hardware maintenance and IT specialist requirements. Having really complicated software means you're going to have some specialized IT people or software maintenance contracts, and it just becomes complicated and expensive for everybody. So if you can go digital but relatively low tech digital, then that's going to be the way to go because it's really going to reduce those IT costs to a minimum. So, what are some of the options out there? So, Google Drive and Workspace, that's kind of the one I like to use because it's really easy to use and everything is there. You can create your dashboards and your spreadsheets and your documents right there, and it's going to be accessible. And you can share those workspaces with your staff, and everything's going to be accessible. Another option, if you're on Office, is to use Microsoft 365 and SharePoint. That integrates with Office, and there's document managed and team sites. I find it to be a little clunky sometimes and hard to use SharePoint, but your mileage may vary, so I throw that out here. Dropbox is another one. It's a secure storage. Um, you're going to do simple file sharing, so you're not going to have things like Google Docs or Excel in there. It's just going to be for file sharing. And then cloud SCADA solutions, so remote monitoring and control of water systems. And SCADA capabilities are increasing all the time. That a lot of times can integrate directly with your cloud-based solution. So there's ways of setting that up so you can actually update your Google Drive with real-time data from the cloud SCADA solutions. So we can see where it gets really you can do some sophisticated things without having a lot of sophistication, and that's really important because in a small water system, a lot of people are doing double duty. You don't have those specialists in IT, so people need to understand the tech without becoming specialists in it. And so if you can set these things up where they're almost automatic, that's really important. So that's how we want to do it. We want to make sure that our water facility data goes into our cloud services. We got our storage and applications in there, and then it's accessible by staff anywhere, any device. That's our goal. So, core components, text SOPs and templates. You're going to want to have that standard SOP structure, so a template that's consistent across your organization. And that's going to require revision logs, approvals, responsibilities, scope and purpose, safety precautions, detailed procedures, data recording, references are all going to go and have some room in that template to have this information in there. The templates ensure consistency across procedures. So the standard format makes updating the SOPs easy, and if you decide you need a new SOP, then you got the format there. Everybody's familiar with it, knows where to look for the information in there, and you can skim through it pretty darn quick. You're going to want to start with high value procedures. Don't try to do everything at once. Pick 3 to 5 to start with, and then it's a little bit of an iterative process. So you're going to want to kind of do it, get feedback, make changes, and go through that and get it right before you start to roll it out elsewhere. So some of the components: version control, responsibilities, who responsible for what, procedures. That's going to be step-by-step instructions, numbered, so you can just follow through. Staff acknowledgement, so everybody's going to want to be trained up on this, and they're going to have to acknowledge that they've seen that. Health and safety is always important when you're around equipment and chemicals, so you're going to want to have that in there as well. Data recording, so the document requirements there. So for example, you might have an SOP for valve inspection, exercising, and maintenance. So you got the revision, it's approved by the operations manager, and here's some of the components that it includes: the equipment list, step-by-step procedure, safety requirements, troubleshooting guide. So it doesn't have to be overly sophisticated and complex, but you want to have that basic information down so you can take the SOP and be able to do the job, and have minimal outside guidance, and the SOP should basically guide you on how to do that particular job. Core components, this is additional stuff: manuals, photos, diagrams, videos, digitized manuals and visual documentation. So you're going to want to digitize the equipment manuals. You're going to want to scan them, add site-specific annotations to provide context and operational insights. So anything that's specific to your location, you can add that digitally to the scan manual, and then you got it right there that's accessible to everybody. Labeled photos and diagrams. This is always good. People are very visual, so having the photos and diagrams and having it labeled, and we'll talk about video here next, but as-built documentation. Convert paper drawings to digital format, link to the GIS systems where possible. So anything that's been built out, your distribution mains and anything that's got an as-built, that should be scanned, and that should be in your SOP digital library as well. Video documentation benefits. This is huge, and this is a growing field. We have an outfit we work with called Vitendo Training Solutions out of Arizona, and I'll drop the link in the show notes here, the show description. But they do a wonderful job doing video documentation of all the equipment out there. They put a QR code on the equipment itself, so you can actually come in and actually scan that QR code and bring up the video. And so you don't even need to type in keywords. It just pops up on your phone, and then you got a video documentation of how that equipment works. So You can tie that back to the actual written SOP, the OEM manual, and all that stuff is linked together. So you have a pretty darn good resource for getting people out there and to improve your operational efficiency, where you're not scratching your head trying to figure out how to make this valve work, or this cross connection control fixing this valve and that type of thing. So it's really a system that works together. So the video documentation captures expert knowledge, so you can actually get your veteran operators on video too, and then equipment walkthrough. That's something the Vitendo does really well. So just a great way to do it. And once it's done, it's done. They will come out and update things if you change out equipment and things like that. But you can see the value of that, having the video documentation. It's huge. um, and getting in more detail on that, you can do smartphones for efficient capture. You're just going to want to make sure that you document everything and understand that other people are going to be watching this. So you want to walk through step by step. That's why having somebody professional like Vitendo come out and do it is really important, because they know how to do that. If you're going to do it yourself, you're going to want to make sure that you understand you're doing a walkthrough that other people are going to watch and need to follow down the road. So you kind of need to plan it out. Um, Record experts performing the actions. And you're going to want to create task specific micro videos. So maybe 2 to 5 minutes per step to walk through the complete process. So little videos on the steps. It breaks complex procedures into digestible segments with captions so everybody can understand it. And then you're going to want to store those with the SOPs, tagged by asset and location. So that's going to be your GIS, tying back into your GIS system. So the latitude and longitude within just a few feet, accuracy, and then you can update when procedures change. So you're going to want to, if you do this yourself, you're going to want to have a pre-production checklist. You're going to want to create a shooting plan. So you're going to need to understand how the process works. You're going to want to plan it out to document every step of the process. So you're going to create a shooting plan. You're going to want to document the safety considerations as well. And while you're shooting the video, you want to make sure that you're also following safety guidelines too. You don't want to get into trouble shooting the video and violating safety procedures and somebody getting hurt. So, and getting approval, you want to confirm with management and operators that the procedure can be recorded. There may be some circumstances where you have some proprietary information or some things that can't get out to the public, or you know if somebody happens to get the video. So it's important to understand that that's going to be rare, but you just want to make sure that management understands what you're doing here and understand the process. So post-production checklist, you're probably going to want to do some basic editing, add in captions, add text overlays for the key steps, and export it in an MP4 format. That's going to be a common format that everybody can use, and cell phones and iPads and computers, and everybody can read an MP4 format. So it's a fairly efficient format. That's probably the best for video. So the upload process, store in the cloud library with consistent naming convention and metadata. You're going to want to be consistent on your naming. So this is going to be part of your planning process, is the naming convention and the metadata that allows you to search for keywords. Now, if you're using somebody like Vitendo again, then they have the QR code. That means you can just skip right to the video and not even have to punch in keywords. So that's another option. So, and link to related content. You want to connect the video to written SOPs, equipment manuals, and training manuals. So you really have everything at your fingertips in the cloud. Step by step. Here's the step-by-step procedures. This is the how. So you're going to want to, and we're looking at kind of like a 90-day. I've seen 180 days one. I think we got a case study here where they did 180 days. Some may be a little longer, but but you're going to want to plan this out and follow the process and start off slow. You're going to want to have a plan. And this just suggests a 90-day, but you can vary that depending on how you want to do it. So step one, inventory and prioritize. So you want to identify your critical processes. That's going to be a very important component of setting up your digital SOPs to understand what your critical procedures are, identify the top 3 to 5, and then start documenting those. And then as you get that down, then roll it out to other ones. You probably don't need to. Everything doesn't have to have an SOP. So that's a common misconception. Some people, think you got to have hundreds of SOPs. That's just not true. You really want to document those processes that are critical. So you want to prioritize based on risk, compliance, complexity. That's going to how you pick that first 3 to 5. Assign risk levels, and you want to document your knowledge gaps where veterans are needed. So you need to pull that information out of their head and get it down digitally. So you want to select your platform and structure. So choose your cloud platform, something like Google Drive or Google Workspace, SharePoint. So you're going to want to understand what that is and the setup requirements. You need to do that. Set up your folder hierarchy and naming conventions. People need to be able to find these things. Yeah, you're going to want to tie keywords to them and you can search that way. But if you have a nice folder hierarchy that's well thought out and all your data is named consistently, that's going to make it easier to find that way too. So you want to establish access permissions by role, and you want to create metadata tags for searchability. That's going to be your keywords. Number 3, templates and knowledge capture. You want to adopt the standardized SOP templates. You're going to want to agree on the templates you're going to use and be consistent with that. Schedule sessions with experienced staff to get that knowledge out of their heads and down into the digital format. Record video demonstrations of the procedures, have a plan for that, and take photos of equipment, controls, hazards. Do drop in if you're editing things digitally, you can drop in captions and stuff so people know exactly what you're looking at. And then number 4, you want to do the pilot program, train and iterate. So you want to begin with the 3 to 5 high priority SOPs. No more than that. That's going to be enough to start this process. You're going to want to train staff on accessing and using the library. You want to collect feedback on usability and clarity. This is really important. You want to get staff buy-in. So you're going to want to collect that feedback and make adjustments so that it's usable for everybody, and revise and expand based on the lessons learned. So like I said, this is a bit of an iterative process. So you're going to want to make some changes as you go along and go back and kind of keep tweaking things as you go along. So start small, be consistent with the templates, involve staff at every stage, and measure usage to demonstrate value. Remember, progress over perfection. We like to say at the Water Masters program, we like to say crawl, then walk, then run. So you're not going to start off running a marathon. You want to start small and work your way up to that. All right, SOP structure and best practices. So this is really what an SOP template is going to include in detail. You're going to have a title page and administration. So the title, date, utility logo, the unique identifier, so you know what's what, definitions and responsibilities. So whatever acronyms you have, you want to explain those. There may be some local use acronyms you're going to need to define as new people come in. So they're going to need understand what this bunch of letters together means. So if you're using them in your SOP, you need to define those. So personnel roles need to be defined. Who does what in this circumstance? Health and safety, very important. In a water system, we're operating around equipment, we're operating around chemicals. So safety is tantamount. We want to understand what the hazards are, personal protective equipment that's needed, any precautions, worksite setup, all needs to be documented in the SOP. And step-by-step procedures. You're going to want to have numbered steps, decision points, troubleshooting, basically like a step-by-step flow chart that's going to show you how to do it with explanations along the way. Version control and acknowledgement. So your revision log is going to be included right there in the SOP, so you know what version you're on. Staff signatures are going to be on there. You're going to want to have the scope and purpose. So that's just going to be an introduction to what the SOP covers and why it's important. Tools and materials. So we got the procedures, but we need to know what kind of equipment, parts, and supplies are needed for this particular task. And then data recording and references. So any documentation requirements, the standards cited you might have, and if there's a video, if there's pictures, if there's any manuals, that all needs to be referenced back in the SOP too. So an example, decision point in valve maintenance and SOP. Um, you got it covered up a little bit there, but checking the valve position, does the valve turns match what's expected based according to the SOP? If no, check the valve size or possible instructions. So that's a very simple flow chart here, but this gives you an idea of the problem you might solve with an SOP. And for somebody new coming on, that's just kind of the step by step. It may seem like it oversimplifies things, but rather be oversimplified than having gaps in those procedures that are going to make it difficult for people to follow through. All right, so integrating SOPs in a data-driven operation. Ultimately, our goal for small water utilities is to turn them into a full data-driven organization where we're using data in everything to make decisions. The SOP is a starting point, an entry point into that, but you can see where the central point where a digital SOP occupies in a data-driven operation. So you have your SCADA system up here where you got real data going in, operational procedures coming out. You have mobile access, so your field access and your tax documentation going in. Your GIS assets, so your asset locations are all tied to this GIS database. And then your maintenance SOPs, because your work orders a lot of times are going to be tied back to that GIS assets. And then you get over to your enterprise asset management work orders, which can be actually tied back to your GIS assets as well. So the outflow is work order data and repair procedures going into that. So it all ties back to your digital SOP library, and that can be a central function of your data-driven operation. um, the data-driven improvement here. That's what we want to do is move everything to data-driven, and so we want to use operational data from the SCADA and EM to identify gaps, continually improve the SOPs because it's always going to be a continual improvement process. Um, and that's going to be based on real world performance metrics and incident reports. So we're going to have some KPIs too that we're going to measure. Automated workflows. So we're going to replace the paper forms and manual data with digital workflows. They're going to automatically create records. That's our ultimate goal. You're probably not going to start out there. There's going to be a little manual, but eventually we want to automate those records. So capture that real-time data coming in from the SCADA system and dump it into spreadsheets automatically. So now we can look at and see that data appearing in our dashboards. That's all within the realm of a data-driven operation. So um, automated workflows, that's really just automating all that. So, and then field accessibility, enabling operators to access SOPs from anywhere using their mobile devices. And they don't have to worry about response times and trying to drag around manuals and binders of SOPs with them during emergencies, routine field work. It's never where you need it to be. So having it instantly accessible on your cell phone is a great way to go. So the benefits overview, a digital SOP library delivers multiple benefits across your organization. So we're really looking at knowledge preservation, so getting that knowledge out of the head down into digital formats so that we can share that with everybody. So that critical institutional knowledge then stays with the water utility and doesn't move on as people retire. Operational consistency, being able to do the same task the same way every time, very important for efficiency. That's going to reduce costs and you're gonna yeah, and it's gonna allow the task to get done faster. So faster onboarding of new personnel as personnel move out and retire. You're gonna be bringing new personnel in. You're gonna have a significant investment in training. That's really where the faster onboarding comes in. Safety and compliance. Um, SOP is going to require that you maintain the safety and compliance because that's a component of the SOP, and better communication. You're going to be able to talk with everybody about what's in the SOP and communicate clearly, and that's going to improve collaboration and create feedback loops that enhance the procedures over time. So here's a quick case study of Harriman Utility Board in Tennessee, actually not too far from me. So it serves over 600 square miles in Tennessee with driving distances up to 45 minutes between facilities. So a very rural district that was formed from consolidation of a number of rural districts. So they really have a patchwork of monitoring technologies from absorbing some of these smaller water utilities, limited access to monitoring data, single computer in the warehouse. So not real good cloud access or digital access, aging equipment with limited repair parts, remote locations requiring frequent site visits to check status. So not that far off of a typical small rural water utility. This may be a little bit bigger than most because they had some consolidations, but some of these problems probably sound fairly familiar to most small rural water districts. So the solution, after experiencing problems with the remote pump station and tank, they basically decided they needed to make some changes. So they dove into the digital transformation and they deployed a small cloud SCADA system basically as a demonstration. So that's that starting small again, once again with a demonstration project or a pilot project. So they're integrating a cloud SCADA, so now people can access that SCADA data from the cloud. They use this to control the booster pump station and maintain TAC levels. So once again, that SCADA is probably capable of more than that, but that's where they started so they could get familiar with it, train people up on it, and get familiar with having the digital data. They expanded to a full system after the successful demonstration. So they added more capabilities, more inputs after they saw that they could track things and what kind of improvements they were really seeing in efficiency. Eventually, they implemented 28 remote sites, including 13 tanks, 16 booster stations, and more in this whole digital transformation. So, the results, they saved 147 million gallons a year just in one incident by identifying and fixing a major leak just 3.5 days after deployment. So, found this leak. They saved 147 million gallons a year. Um, that was really a 10% reduction in overall water loss since their system implementation, $300,000 a year in savings just from that one leak. And then reduced overtime, fewer emergency calls for pressure and overflow issues because now they're getting real time data from monitoring the SCADA system, and everything is available in the internet. So they had a 6 month rollout here. So 180 days basically. They started with the additional demo, and by month 6, they had all 28 sites online. So maybe a little aggressive for that size, but they had a real need. So they efficiently went through their demo project, their pilot project, and they decided it worked, and then they rolled it out, and they got some great benefits here. So great case study. So here is the implementation roadmap. This is kind of um, condensing everything down into the roadmap for small water systems. So your foundation, 0 to 30 days. And once again, this is looking at a 6 month time frame. Um, Faster or slower, it really depends on you and what your capabilities are and what you feel you're capable of. But you really want to start with your foundation. So you're going to select the cloud platform, set up access permissions, create the folder structure and the naming conventions, create and adopt the SOP template structure, develop 3 to 5 pilot SOPs for critical processes, and provide staff orientation and basic training. And then we want to move to After we get that pilot project under our belt and get it working fine in 30 to 90-day area or thereabouts, you want to go to expansion. So migrate the top 20 SOPs to a digital format. So now you're expanding out a little bit. Add photos and diagrams and a lot of these other digital assets to enhance the clarity. Record video demonstrations of key procedures, implement basic analytics and usage tracking, and gather feedback and refine processes. Every step of the way, you want to have input from the staff to make sure they buy in and get ideas on what's going to make things work for them. They're the ones that have to use it, so you want to make sure you have the buy-in. And then integration, 90 to 100 days, 80 days is suggested here, so 3 to 6 months. You want to integrate with existing systems, so your enterprise asset management plan, your SCADA system, your GIS system. You want to enable mobile field access for operators, and that might be something you do during the expansion or even the foundational phase. Is give at least some of the operators mobile field access to test the data. You want to establish formal review and an update cadence. How often are we going to update these things? Part of that iterative process. You want to develop advanced training programs. You want to scale to additional operational areas. So now you're expanding out and you're integrating everything in to this digital transition with your digital SOPs. So key strategy, once again, we're reiterating this, start small with a high impact SOPs, build incrementally with staff involvement, very important, and grow towards fully integrated digital knowledge system. Focus initial efforts on critical operations and compliance related procedures. That's going to be that 3 to 5 SOPs that you start off with. Those are going to be the most critical, and then you're going to roll it out through the expansion and integration phases. Overcoming common barriers. Let's face it, most small water utilities are resource constrained in some ways, whether it's in their budget, whether it's in their staff capacity or capabilities, or both. So it's important to understand what we can do with our budget and with our staff. And so that's why you got to really take that into consideration when you're rolling these things out and designing your program. So with a limited budget, you're going to want to use low cost cloud tiers like the free Google Drive, the basic SharePoint is a way to start. And then you can go to the paid tiers as you get more data and get more sophisticated. You're going to want to apply for grants, EPA small system, USDA, and other types of funding. Take a phased approach, start with the 3 to 5 critical SOPs. That's not going to tax you too much, and you're going to be able to prove that it works. Staff capacity, you're going to want to use a template first approach to minimize formatting work and make the staff's time take the best use of their time. Create 2 to 3 minute micro learning videos instead of long manuals. That's going to be easier to digest. And seek peer assistance from regional partnerships. If you have other utilities or water systems in your area that have done some of these steps, then go to them and ask for advice or ask for help. They're usually happy to help out and offer advice, tell you what worked and what didn't, and maybe you can sidestep some of those challenges early on. And you're probably going to want to also do some staff capacity, some training, move them up the curve a little bit on the technology you're planning to use. So pick some staff that maybe have some capabilities in those areas, and then invest in some training. Those are dollars well spent. So uh, limited connectivity. So you're going to need to enable offline sync capabilities. So not in rural water systems, not all systems are going to have the internet everywhere and the connectivity. So you're going to want to have to, if you have some dead zones, you're going to want to plan to have offline sync capabilities, and that requires a little bit of planning just to make sure you can access information, know where you have coverage, where you can get that information, download things ahead of time that you need, and you can still have it digitally, and it'll update when you get back with the internet. But you got to understand what your limits are, and some of that you may not have time to get these Wi-Fi hotspots out there all the time. So that's going to require a little bit of money and some investment. So that may be later down in your implementation phases. So you're going to want to maintain printed backup copies of the mission critical SOPs. So you're not totally going to escape paper, but for the most part, that's going to be early on. We probably mainly wanted to transition to digital, and eventually you should be able to do away with those paper SOPs. Prioritize the most essential procedures for offline access. So your really mission critical ones should be available. You should have them on your phone and on your device, electronic device at all times so that you don't have to rely on the internet if you get into non-internet areas or the internet goes down, which it does in rural areas. Change management, resistance to change is a real thing. So you need to overcome that. So you need to involve operators in the SOP creation, digital implementation, get that buy-in early on, get people excited, get them on board, get a champion, somebody that champions it in the office and helps move forward. Uh, test SOPs with diverse users, so new, experienced, different roles, um, different people in different roles, and kind of test the SOPs and see if they work. Make sure everybody can understand them, and tweak the process based on feedback you get. And you want to, and lastly, really important, establish that continuous feedback loop for improvement. This is going to be a long-term iterative process. You're going to have feedback loops throughout, and even when you get things down where it's humming along fairly well, you're still going to want to have that feedback loop and everybody understand what's going on, because there's always room for improvement. Even if there's minor changes, you got the major systems working, but there may be minor tweaks you can do to improve efficiency. And you always want to be looking for that. And staff is going to tell you, what works and what doesn't. All right. So governance, version control, and reviews. You want to assign a dedicated SOP coordinator. So somebody's going to be the central point for standards, quality control, and maintenance of the library. Um, you want to establish a review schedule and version control. So a lot of times the SOP will basically have on there that it needs to be reviewed and updated on an annual basis or some kind of date. You're going to want to use a numbering scheme for versions. So 1.0 is going to be a major version. 0 0.1 might be a minor revision. So that digital numbering sequence, and have that on there. Document training and acknowledgement. Maintain staff acknowledgement records and training completion logs so everybody is trained up on these things. And implement access control and audit trail. Apply the least privilege principle, maintain history of who accessed and modified documents. You don't want just anybody going in there and rummaging around and changing your SOPs. Um, especially if they go in and change something and it's not versioned properly. So that goes back to your SOP coordinator. They need to know who's accessing the SOP and making any changes. So for that, we really look at the RACI matrix, and RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So different people with different roles. So we got the tasks over here, and then we have the different people or positions. Every small water utility might not have every of these positions, so you might get some overlap here, but we can see, for instance, the top one here, create a new SOP. Um, that's going to be the accountable. The SOP coordinator is going to be accountable, department manager. Um, the subject expert is going to be the responsible party for that, that's responsible for doing that. Um, operators are going to be consulted, and IT support is going to be informed. So you can see kind of how that works. To review and approve the SOP content, the department manager is going to be responsible for that. Maintaining version control, that's going to be the SOP coordinator is going to be responsible for that. Train staff on the SOPs is going to be the department manager. And then manage access permissions, that's going to be IT support, because they're going to have to control who has access. All right. Security and cyber considerations. This is really important because you want to lock down your data. cybersecurity is becoming more and more important, even for small water utilities. So you're going to want to use reputable cloud service with strong security features, multi-factor authentication, automatic backups, data encryption at rest and in transit. Um, Separate public communications from internal SOPs. You want to have kind of a firewall between those so the public can't get access and thus hackers can't get access. Define data ownership and exit clauses with vendors. If vendors have to have access to this information, you need to know who owns the data and how to retrieve it if changing providers. Cloud shifts some cyber risk to the provider, but vigilance remains essential. Everybody's responsible for cybersecurity. So you want a security controls checklist. Multi-factor authentication is really one of the safer ways to control access these days, as opposed to passwords. Implement role-based access controls. Conduct quarterly security reviews, and document incident response procedures. Use strong, unique passwords for each account or through multi-factor authentication. Verify automatic backup configurations. Don't just set it and forget it. Make sure it's actually doing the backups. And you're always going to want trained staff on phishing and social engineering. That is the number one way hackers get access to computer systems is through phishing and social engineering, not actually hacking into your system. So they get somebody to give their password somehow or give them access, trick somebody. So you really got to watch out for that and train staff on the current phishing and social engineering, those types of approaches to getting access to your system. And you're going to want to monitor for unusual access patterns. Most of your providers are going to provide some kind of user log. So if you're seeing a lot of login attempts from foreign countries, you might want to pay attention to that. All right, getting started checklist and resources. Your action checklist, you pick your platform. Number one, we've talked about that. Setting your structure is going to be really important and consistent naming convention. You're going to want to adopt your template. Select 5 priority SOPs. I say 3 to 5. Um, Schedule your knowledge capture. So you're going to want to record sessions with your veteran staff to document procedures, train staff on access, and create an update cadence. So your SOPs need to be updated on certain intervals. That's going to should go right on the SOP. This SOP was created on this date. The current version was created on this date. It's scheduled for at least a review on this date. So you're looking at these at least on an annual basis, going over all them on an annual basis and seeing if it needs to be updated. If there's any new information from the equipment provider, for instance, that needs to be incorporated in, then that's something you want to look at incorporating. So by doing a regular review of your SOP, that's going to be important. So support resources, EPA small systems programs, RCAP, RCAC technical assistance. They're throughout the country, and rural water associations also was in there. U.S. Water Alliance, the environmental finance centers are out there. They have a lot of YouTube videos and they do webinars on a lot of these topics. State primacy agencies, they will help you. All states have those. And there's some other organizations here. I don't know much about this last one. I throw them up there for the sake of completeness, but there are other sources too. We, through the Water Masters program, provide some assistance generating the SOP templates. We got some standard ones we use, video creation guides. Like I say, we work a lot with Vitendo Training Solutions on that, and we can help people get that set up. Cloud setup tutorials, grant applications, peer network access, mobile access solutions. We can at least provide guidance on that. Obviously, we don't do grant applications, but we have some good friends who do and are really good at it, and so we're happy to provide referrals. All right, so conclusion and next steps, your key takeaways. I'm just going to reiterate these things. Start small, begin with 3 to 5 critical SOPs, focus on high value procedures, pair SOPs with visuals and data. That's going to be the pictures. That's going to be the OEM manuals. That's going to be the videos. Iterate and improve. It's constant improvement process. That's what we want to do. Success metrics to track the staff onboarding time. So these are going to be some of the KPIs you can insert in here to see how you're doing. So staff onboarding time. How long does it take to onboard staff? Incidence rate, fewer errors and operational issues, audit findings, improved compliance outcomes for your financial audits, for instance, and faster emergency response time, reducing emergency response time. That's a key metric you can measure too. So, so here's your 90-day SOP implementation program, digital SOP implementation program. Um, this can be 180 days. Like I said, it's really up to you to determine how quickly you want to do it. But the key part is getting started with that first start small and get started and get on your path to becoming a data driven organization. All right, that is that's the presentation here. Let me switch back to my closing here. All right. Thank you very much for watching our presentation on digital SOPs, a real in-depth step-by-step process, but it gives you an idea of the how, not only the why and the what, but the how, and that sometimes takes a little bit of time to explain, but hopefully you get the idea. If Feel free to reach out. My email is down here. If you want to comment on the video, I reply to all comments. And I would ask you also to like and share. That helps with the YouTube algorithm and helps get some visibility for these videos out there. So that's definitely appreciated. If you got some value out of this video, please like it and share it if at all possible. And with that, we will see you in the next video.